I got a medium dick, medium dick. It ain't too long and it ain't too thick. It's perfectly average size. If anything, it's pretty big for a white guy.
Pretty much molded my identity around it because, you know, I'd been a musician for such a long time, and that was my identity. And then my most recent band had broken up, and I just needed something to cling to. And so I was okay at comedy pretty quick, and so that became the new thing. That became who I was.
I've always envied a guy that can just grab a guitar or go to the piano and do stand-up. Likewise with magicians. And, you know, just because something's not working, you can just, you know, you switch to that, you know? It's like, wow, what a great tool.
A DVD and forget my medium dick. Medium dick, it won't blow your mind, but it'll do the trick. And if history shows, it'll be over quick. My adequate, bland, forgettable medium dick.
Cameron James, we're talking in the pregame, and we're talking about Texas barbecue. He's in Sydney, Australia, and we're just talking about the differences. You know, now I want to know. I want to get in your origin story and all that. But because you said I would love to try all the Southern food. If I was going to hang out with you in Sydney, what would be signature foods? I'm not Vegemite. You know, let's talk about what would be the real signature foods that I'd be eating out there that you would show me out there.
You know, like, I mean, obviously an Australian barbecue is maybe the iconic thing, but we do a kind of rip off of your culture. We do American style food. We have a lot of American style, like smash burger places. Yeah. We also have a lot of, Mexican restaurants as well. We do a lot of that. I think maybe Australian food is everyone else's food. That's pretty much our vibe.
Kind of America also, other than barbecue. That's like America.
Yeah. I suppose you're right. We have a lot of Thai restaurants. Do you guys have a lot of Thai over there?
Yeah. Well, I'm from LA, so we got a lot of everything. But Thai restaurants, a lot of Thai restaurants, all kinds of.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty much have just taken everyone else's dishes, which I guess you guys did too. So yeah, we even took your barbecue. We have a few American style barbecue places here, and they're great. And I cook a lot of barbecue myself. I cook a lot of brisket, but. I mean, I as I said to you in the pregame, I watch a lot of videos of American barbecue and just think, man, I got to get over there. I pretty much just want to do a food tour. I don't even care about performing at this point. I just want to go and eat.
Yeah. Well, why not? You get to make people laugh at night, and you get to, go try out all the cool restaurants in the day. You know what? That would be a good little, like a video thing.
It's not a bad series.
Yeah, it's a series. Yeah. That's what you do. You go around, and then you go to the food places during the day, and then you tell everybody where you're performing, and then you do you review it, and then you go do stand up at night.
That's great. And then the second season is my weight loss journey, and it's just watching me
right
diet, traveling around dieting and working
like that documentary Super Size Me, that guy. Right? For that?
Yeah. Of course I remember that guy. Of course.
That was perfect.
He's not around anymore, by the way. That dude, he's not making stuff anymore.
No, I hopefully I think he's around. He's healthy, hopefully, but he's not. Well, he can only do so many, one of those tricks, so many times, especially when I think he's a vegan. Let's go back. Let's go back to, I want to know when you started to think about doing stand-up, and where did you perform for the first time, and what was that like?
All right. So I used to play music like all through my teenage years and early 20s. I was playing guitar in bands in the city I grew up in, a place called Newcastle, which is kind of like suburban, a suburban place that's maybe 2 hours outside of Sydney, our big city. And so I was playing in bands for a long time. And then one of my bands broke up, and I was at a loss, and I needed a job. And a friend of a friend got me a job at a dinner theater restaurant. You guys have those in the States, right?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the very cheesy, kind of lame place, like it was horror themed. So there's, fake bats and skeletons on the walls, and everyone's dressed up in makeup like they're a zombie or a vampire or something. And I got a job at one of those as a singing waiter. And I worked there for about a year. And in that time, one of the guys that I worked with kept telling me that he was a stand-up comedian. You know, most people there were failed musicians or wannabe actors or something. But this one guy kept saying, I'm a stand-up. I'm a really good stand-up. You guys should all come and watch me do stand-up. And eventually a bunch of us did. And he was so bad, man. He was terrible. It was one of those things where it was just, I remember watching him and the light bulb went off in my head where I thought, oh, I've got to be funnier than this guy. Yeah. I have to be.
Yeah.
And so that led to me researching how to even start comedy. I didn't even know really where to begin. So
He inspired you.
That's inspired me. I was inspired by his badness.
Yeah.
And that got me into it. Yeah.
So where was that? Where'd you first perform?
That was okay. So I was living in Newcastle. So as I said, that's the suburbs. It's 2 hours outside the city. I was researching where do you perform, what's around, and there was a bunch of rooms in Sydney, 2 hours away. Mm-hmm. And so I contacted all of them. I told them all that I was a professional comedian. I didn't say I've never done this. I was like, hey, I've been doing comedy in Newcastle. I'd love to play in Sydney. You know, can you put me on? And eventually one of them put me on. I did my first set. It was at, I don't know what the room was called then because it's changed names a lot, but it's now called Standout Comedy. And it's still running to this day. And I performed there again the other night. It's around. You can go. You can, if anyone cares, you can do a pilgrimage to Standout Comedy where I did my first set when you're in Sydney.
Did you do well enough to where you went back?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was, I had a lot of confidence because, you know, I'd been playing music for a long time and I'd been, of course, killing it at the theater restaurant. Yeah, so I had a lot of stage confidence. I think my material was probably pretty average, pretty mediocre, but I must have done well enough to want to come back. The main memory I have of the first set is that I did crowd work. I improvised and did a little riffing with the audience because I was just used to doing that from performing, you know, like being able to have a chat to someone in the front row and get a laugh out of it and then go back into my material. And I think that was enough to, you know, make me feel like, oh, I'm relatively comfortable doing this. I can do this okay. I need to work on the material, but I'm at least okay on stage.
What was your methodology for writing material? Was it going on stage or did you really get formal about it?
I got really formal. So I started listening to a lot of comedy podcasts around that time as well because I wanted to know more about it. So I think Mark Maron's show was running. I was listening to a lot of that. Pete Holmes had a podcast, still does have a podcast. A lot of these guys, and I just copied exactly what they said to do. So they would talk about running material, writing it, rewriting it, then getting up on stage, trying it, improvising. I just pretty much copied exactly what the Americans said to do. And now, I mean, just like Australia with the food, you know, I've just taken the American style. But yeah, now I think I write a little more on stage than I used to. But back then I would literally script it out like it was a play, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, but there really is like most comedians, is no substitute for stage time, really. I mean, isn't it really come down to, because you could do a lot of writing and then and get good at it. But then how long would you say it took you? Because you had a nice shoehorn with being a musician and that wonderful experience of doing dinner theater. It's very 70s of you, by the way. That was very 70s. Remember in the late 70s, I'm older than you, you know, in LA, they used to have restaurants. One in particular, it's a really cool place. You know, everybody brings this up in LA, part of history. It's called Poppy Star. Let's say, let me take you back to 1979. 450 SL convertibles rolling up to this place called Poppy Star on Ventura Boulevard, where you would, there'd be like a fireplace out in front and there'd get valet parking and you go in and there's different stages all around this large restaurant, different rooms. And all the waiters and waitresses are performers, it's LA, right?
Mm.
And in between, they would all get up on stage and do a thing, and then they would disperse, and then they would go over to your table, take your orders and all that. It's called Poppy Star. And the guys with the feathered hair and the spoon necklace, you know what I mean? All that.
Yeah.
And I was just a kid, but just seeing that, your dinner party, not like that, I guess. Or how was that? How did that prepare you for your experience?
It's probably not too dissimilar to that. I think Australia also in the 70s and 80s had a big dinner theater restaurant boom. the dinner theater boom hit Australia. Yeah. And then there was just a few that stuck around a little bit longer. The one I worked at was one of those ones that stuck around until, like the 2010s or so. Okay. And probably was just getting worse and worse every year. Less and less people coming to it. The budget getting smaller and smaller.
I pictured cheap prime rib at this place.
You're picturing exactly correct. Cheap prime rib, like a chicken linguine pasta, a vegetable lasagna, drinks. Huge cocktails. Like the main thing that you would go to these places for is just to get wasted on giant cocktails that would come out in a fish bowl, like a giant fish bowl with lots of accoutrement in it, lots of little umbrellas and straws and stuff. Yeah. And it was horror themed, like I said. That was the main thing that they went for. We're doing a spooky dinner theater restaurant, like Rocky Horror Picture Show, The Addams Family. That's kind of the vibe they're going for in there. Yeah. But I was, they ran out of characters to start giving people. And so the character I got by the time I started was Captain Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Not spooky, not a scary character at all. But that's what they were up to. They're like, yeah, you get to be Jack Sparrow. You get to run around like a pirate. I guess as far as what did I learn from it, maybe performing on stage without an instrument. That was probably the first time I'd ever done that. I generally had been on stage with guitar around my neck. This was just running around, with a microphone. Also, it was embarrassing to work there. So I learned to be okay with that, to kind of be okay being the fool. Because all through high school, I thought I was cool as hell. I was playing in bands. I had a high opinion of myself maybe. And then now I was just forced to sort of be a pirate at a dinner theater restaurant. And I just very quickly had to be okay with being the fool. And then that really opened the door for comedy, because you can't have an ego in comedy. You've got to accept you're a clown.
That's huge. What a wonderful thing, because once you can get over that and get the reps into that and realize dealing with bombing and all that and get to the real work, that's a wonderful experience. So you had a lot of nice reps to shoehorn you in when you started doing stand-up. How long, how did you start going up right away, right after that first time in Sydney?
Yeah, I pretty much molded my identity around it because, I'd been a musician for such a long time, and that was my identity. Mm-hmm. And then my most recent band had broken up, and I just needed something to cling to. And so I was okay at comedy pretty quick. And so that became the new thing. That became who I was. I was doing it every night. I'd go out, as often as I could. I started doing the road or whatever, like the Australian equivalent of the road. There's only like 6 capital cities. So you can, you can tour around a bit. I started doing that really early as a host, as an MC. And yeah, that's pretty much when it all kicked off. And then I've never really looked back. But although the one change I've made in the last 15 years is I've started bringing music into my comedy now, which I never did before. I always kept them pretty separate. And in the last 3, maybe since COVID, actually, I started realizing that I missed having music in my life. I missed performing. I missed playing songs. I miss, writing music. And I've just started, incorporating that as one of the things that I do on stage.
I think that's really cool because many comedians that play an instrument, they will use that when they first start doing stand-up and then branch out. Or like magicians, they'll go in there and they'll do magic. Yours was the opposite. You like perfected your craft, or you got more involved with your craft as a comedian, and then you brought in music back into it, which I think that's a smart thing. I think that's great. Now, I always envy guys. I'm as far as my stand up, I'm a ham and egger. I it's been off and on since I'm 19, but I'm never a professional stand up comedian. But I know a lot of comedians, and I've always envied the guy that can just grab a guitar or go to the piano and do stand up. Likewise with magicians, and just because something's not working, you could just you switch to that, it's like, wow, what a great tool. It's so cool,
It is a bit. I always felt that way about Steve Martin, like I love Steve Martin, and I think it's very cool that he's also an incredibly talented banjo player. And he can just do that. Sometimes you see Steve Martin just pick up a banjo and start shredding like he's Van Halen, like the Van Halen of bluegrass. And sometimes it's not even funny. He's just doing it because he can or because he wants to. I sort of treated it a bit like that. Like, hey, I've gotten okay at stand up. I'm pretty decent at storytelling. One side of my personality that I've never really shared with people is the music. And I think I want to embrace that because, it's something that I've got in my back pocket, but also it's like a whole other side of my life that I kept saying to people at the time, I was like, God, it's like I'm just showing everyone who I am or who I was before comedy. It's kind of nice. It feels like I've tapped into the old me a little bit, which I like.
Right. I mean, that's what all the comedians you could be in. There's several different types of stand-up that you can do, but when you share yourself, it's always intriguing. Look at the Pantheons, the greats, and that's what they did. Before I logged on with you, I was listening to, you brought in some, aspects of things that intrigued you, so you're talking about, what was that routine that you did where you're talking about the noise, where the noise, what was that?
That's a very old bit of mine, which I weirdly had to pull out of my ass recently. I'd completely forgotten it, but it's like a 10-year-old joke of mine about one of those strange kids' toys that you guys probably had too. It's like a tube and it has a little rubber thing inside of it. And when you turn it either way, it makes a noise. It goes,
yes.
I used to, so that was one of my first dumb jokes that I used to do because it was just a noise I made at home when I was a kid. And so I had that in my repertoire. And so I used to do a joke about trying to buy one of those toys, but not knowing what it's called and having to do the sound for the clerk at the toy store. It was like a clean bit. It was a bit of clean comedy. It was one of the rare clean bits that I had. So I could do it anywhere. And I could also do it if I had to do something on television. And then I completely forgot about it. It's about a 10-year-old joke. And then very recently I played a Christmas party for a corporate gig for a Christmas party. And the majority of the crowd was people in their, 70s. And they didn't tell me until I got there that they wanted it to be clean. I had to do half an hour. So I went into the toilet and relearned that bit off YouTube.
Wow. You had to look up your own routine and get reacquainted with it.
Yeah, I just watched it on YouTube and went, oh yeah, that's how it went. It was this bit. And then I dug out about 4 or 5 clean bits. And I got to tell you, at that show in particular, I was so glad that I had the guitar with me because I could just go into songs. And, I've got a couple of dirty songs, but I've also got a couple that are clean. I was like, thank God for this, man, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do half an hour of clean, in front of these people.
Yeah. Well, the sounds and the things like, all comedies, they say, is on a fifth grade level, and I think that everybody, this, when it's simplistic, sometimes it gets too complicated. And something that was a great routine, I remember when I was in fourth grade, the funniest thing I thought was one of those whistles with a wind in them, the little windmill and the whistle, yeah, I got 86 from a birthday party when I found one of those. Yeah, so people find fifth grade level the most fascinating. I mean, what's your material gravitating towards right now?
I've just started the last couple of years, started really expanding like the long form storytelling, which has been kind of cool because, when I was sort of starting out, I was mainly into short jokes, but these days, I think because I spend so much time podcasting and I've worked on a few TV shows, and I've actually made a couple of funny documentaries out here. I've just enjoyed the challenge of writing something that's a bit longer, like a long piece that kind of has an arc and has, callbacks and, maybe a bit of a narrative to it, a few twists and whatnot. So the last couple of years I've been really focusing on that. And I find nostalgia is where I'm mainly focusing on. I've just worked on a big chunk of stuff about the theater restaurant that I worked at, because it's a pretty crazy story. The place that I worked at. I mean, obviously I've told you a little bit about it, the horror theme and all that stuff, but it was also sort of a hotbed for local crime. It was a strange little criminal scene. There was like a lot of drug dealing going on there. Nice. And a lot of sex and a lot of like breaking local liquor license rules and stuff like that. So I've been stretching that out and turning that into a fun little story. I keep saying to people, like, my theater restaurant experience is like Boogie Nights. Like I was Dirk Diggler, I entered the theater restaurant scene. I started climbing the ladder. I started getting good at it, and then the 80s came and it all turned around, and the whole thing came crumbling down around me. Except I don't have a huge dick. I got a pretty normal sized penis. But
I don't know if you know my background. I mean, did you bring that up because you know my background or what? No?
Oh no! Why? What? Tell me.
Oh, I played the original Dirk Diggler in the short film with Paul Thomas Anderson. Then I appeared in Boogie Nights as well.
Brother, that is why I've been staring at your face. I've watched the original short so many times, and I've been like, God, I know your face.
I only bring that up to tell you that the real Dirk Diggler, me, which has nothing to do with porn, the actor, is not gifted like that in any way, shape, or form. So, just giving you. So that's.
I've seen that short. It's incredible. It's so cool, and there's parts of it in the movie, right? There's.
Yeah. We improved. Matter of fact, I just talked to my friend Eddie Delcor, who played Reed Rothschild in the short film too. He was a bodybuilder. He was in the short film. He wasn't in the film because he became a very religious guy, so he didn't want to do the film when Paul said, "Hey, you want to come back and do this?" But that's. I digress on that, but I think it's funny to connect those dots.
I mean, it's incredibly fascinating to me. You couldn't have said that to I'm the right person to hear this exact information. I'm a big nerd for Paul's stuff, and I love that. I love that short in particular. It's a great short.
You got to be a real a film nerd, because only when the film came out, like a year after it came out, I was in a place called Dave's Laser on Ventura Boulevard, where they used to sell DVDs. And this would never happen anywhere. And I give him my thing, and the guy looks at me and goes, "You're the original Dirk Diggler." I'm like, you know what? This is the only place on planet Earth where anybody would ever say that. It's so obscure that but we're in a DVD store. So, anyways, speaking of connecting the dots,
that's so cool.
I want to get back into something. You're talking about long form writing stand up. When you connect when you, I started doing this because I was doing stand up several months back. I stopped because I'm launching a business, but I do that. I go off and on. I'm one of those guys.
Sure.
But writing stories in long form, to me, it's almost like connecting dots because I'll think about the story that I want to write. And then I'll think about the premise and the connectors. And I'll try to go, what are the negative, the shattered assumptions and the connectors. Every joke has a connector, right? So you're looking at, okay, here's the, now, because the LPMs, we want to keep them around at least 4 per minute, right? So you're
you want a lot.
So I got one there and I connected dot there because I need a laugh point, so I'm trying to find connectors, in between the story. Do you dissect it like that, or how do you create more LPMs in your long form, routines?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do now. So it took me such a long time to even figure out how to do long stories. I'd mainly done short jokes, and then I worked on this documentary, a sort of like comedic documentary out here, and it wasn't until we were editing that I started to really get how story worked. I kind of thought, oh wow, we've taken real life and now we're editing it to suit a narrative structure for this documentary that has a beginning and a middle and an end, and setups and payoffs and dramatic irony, and the ending mirrors the start. And that was a light bulb moment for me of going, fucking hell, I can do that with my life as well. If I'm doing it with this guy's life, why aren't I doing it with my own stuff? And then I can just use the short jokes that I already have as pepper on top of the story. As far as getting those LPMs up, I remember this thing Mike Birbiglia said about the way he tells a story is he'll tell a part of it and then stop and step to the side and comment on the part that he's just told, and then progress the story and do the same thing again. So it's almost like you have little off ramps at every beat of the story where you can go, isn't that crazy? That happened, and you can make a joke about that, and then you can make an analogy to something else. That's like when this happens or whatever. And also lying, I think, helps, because if you need to get a few extra laughs, why not just add a couple of lies? Raise the stakes.
Yeah, you have to do that. You got to kind of stretch. But because if your mind sees the story, and everybody knows a comedian's it doesn't have to be autobiographical to a T. We're not making Raging Bull. So totally. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think the lie, that's the part that no one ever wants to admit, especially comedians. Everyone's like, no, this is true. This is a true story. This happened to me. And then you go, yeah, but I mean, you made up that bit, right? Where the lady came over and vomited on your lap.
Right.
That bit didn't happen, right?
Right.
Yeah, you add little lies. I mean, but also because I, mainly wrote short jokes for a long time, I think I've still got that muscle. And I can pull out a joke. Also, by the way, I don't know if I've told you this or whatever, but I write jokes for other comedians over here for TV and stuff. Nice. That's one of my little side hustles. Is I write TV comedy and I write gags for other comics to make. So I do have that. I'm constantly stretching that muscle as well,
Yeah, keeps you busy, keeps you paid, keeps you in shape.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, yeah, exactly. It's keeping you in shape because you're writing for someone else, and then you go, I could do something, not like I could do this subject material, but I could do one of these style jokes for myself if I wanted, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as far as like, what am I writing about now? I'm really digging into the long form stuff, and subject material wise, this is a bit strange, but I've been trying to write about my relationship more. I know relationship material is pretty standard for comics, but I've never really done that. I've always avoided writing about my relationship and keeping my wife out of it. but we've been together for a long time, and we've also known each other for a long time. My wife and I, we met when we were children essentially, and then we got together in our 20s. So we've known each other most of our lives. And I think that's kind of unique. And so I'm trying to write about that now with her permission, by the way.
That's the best stuff. I mean, everybody, you know what, this is the beauty about stand-up, you know, and that is everybody's got a blue, you know, their own thumbprint, and no one can steal that. And that's what I think. You know, it's like we want to know more about you and all the dirty details and all that. And that stand-up is the same way. When somebody goes up on stage, like, what's this guy's story? You know, I want to know more about him. You know, I mean, there's other guys that, you know, do other types of material, but I always think it gets more intriguing when you expose yourself, you know, emotionally.
Not Diggler style.
Yeah, that's right. Call back. So now, where are you at today in your career? What's happening with you, you know, in your life, and what's happening with your career, like this week, you know, recently?
This week. So we do this thing called the comedy festival circuit over here. You guys have comedy festivals as well. I know there's like the New York Comedy Festival, and I think San Francisco, and what's the big one? There's like a Colorado.
Toronto. I thought in Canada.
Toronto. The Just for Laughs.
Yeah, that's the big one. And then there's Edinburgh, right? Or the one over in
Edinburgh as well. Yeah. So like the way our industry works is, you know, every capital city pretty much has its own comedy festival. Yeah. And they usually, I mean, the way they've worked it is they last for a month, and it's every month for about 5 months in a row. Mm. And if you want to, you can do all of them and treat it like a tour. And that's what I'm doing this year. So I've worked out an hour of material over the last year and a half or so, and I'm touring it to all these festivals. And you spend like a month in each city, really, playing in a venue and hopefully growing an audience over that time. And you do about 22 shows in each city. And there's also a lot of spots going as well, a lot of like late night spots, and, you know, a lot of showcase shows on. Sometimes there's some big galas and big theaters as well. If you're lucky, you get to do some of those. And yeah, so I'm for the first time in a long time doing all of these comedy festivals and just running this hour every single night and having fun with it, and trying to stay positive, trying not to lose my mind, because it does feel a bit crazy doing the same hour, however many times it is, like 70 something nights in a row. Yeah. It does make you feel a bit cuckoo.
But what a wonderful experience, especially being Australia. What a unique experience, because it's a tight knit, it's a big area, yeah, but it's a tight knit group. So the synergy that you end up going through doing that, you know, and you being, you know, native to that area, I can only imagine there's something that, you know, Australian comedians probably have, that when they do that circuit, that there's a unique thing that comes out of that.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, everyone kind of knows each other. There are a lot of comedians, especially in the wake of like Joe Rogan's show getting so big. There's so many open micers and comics now, but it's still very small compared to America. So a lot of people do know each other. And it's one of those strange things where you can be pretty new at comedy here, and you can be on a lineup with some of the most famous people in the country, because that's how small the scene is, you know? And a lot of these very famous comics will do the full festival circuit. So you see them around a lot, and there's a lot of camaraderie, and I think all our material gets pretty sharp. But then the goal becomes, what do I do with this hour? Because like we don't really have a culture of filming stand-up specials here, unfortunately. Right. We should. I mean, it's just starting to happen with the streaming services, that comics are starting to film their stuff and sell it to a streamer. Right. And hopefully that's something that I can do one day. But, you know, otherwise, what do you do with it? Because you've just spent, you know, half a year or more. It's a year and a half's worth of stuff. you've toured it around the entire country in less than half a year, you can't really go back and keep touring that hour. So what do you do with it? So, I mean, you know, that's kind of where my head's at now. I'm enjoying doing the show. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, but I am starting to think, God, it's in pretty good shape. I'd love to be able to put this up somewhere, even if it's just YouTube, you know, I'd love to be able to film this and put it up.
Why don't you do that? Just produce it and then put it up on YouTube and Amazon and, you know, it's kind of like the stand-up is like the movie scene, the film scene in the 90s, with like making your film and then having it go to Sundance. But it's even more accessible than that now because you can stream it everywhere.
Yeah, that's so true. I know. I guess that's something I should work towards for the second half of the year, is trying to film this hour and chuck it up before it gets too sloppy. Because I'm sure this happens to everyone. You do the same hour long enough, at a certain point, it gets really good. And then about a month after that, it starts falling apart. Just because you get so bored of it. And
like wine.
Yeah, it's like wine.
It could age out.
It ages out. It can. It 100% can. You feel it happen. You go, oh man, this bit used to be tight, but I'm just padding it out with shit now because I've clearly gotten bored of the material and I'm doing anything to make it exciting for me. So yeah, I've got to try and film it before that happens, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's probably your modus operandi. Now that leaves as we come to a close, what's on the long-term play, 5, 10, 15, do you plan that far ahead? What's long-term plan?
Yeah, I think as far ahead as maybe 5 years. I'd like to spend a bit of time thinking about what 15 years could look like for me. But it's so hard to tell, but I'd say 5 years. I've been working on a TV show idea out here that I would love to get up. And the last hour that I toured around, which had a lot of long form stuff about my childhood and my teenage years, playing in bands, especially like the failure of like being a failed musician was the arc of the story or the show. And being okay with that, like being okay with it not working out. I've been working with another writer and producer, two buddies of mine, on coming up with a film version of that. So we've been working on that. So like my pie in the sky dream thing that happens is that I either get to make a TV show or a film, and they're both funny, but they have a bit of a dramatic arc to them, and they involve music, and it's kind of all those things that I love coming together. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what I would love.
You got the chops to do it. I've seen it online, and now it's just a case of, I'd like to see you do those hour shows, because once you got a great show, especially after that 5-month stint, might as well just, something is better than nothing, right? You might as well say, well, you probably, I don't know, I'm gonna guess, say, I don't have the right camera equipment or film, or no one's gonna do a favors for me right now. Find the favor somehow. Just shoot it on whatever you can. You got to shoot on the new iPhone 15, whatever you got. Somebody, and then just get the best lights you can and just shoot it, and do it at the place that you've, because look at Sarah Silverman at Largo. You know where Largo is.
I love that.
Do you know what Largo is? It's a really cool.
I've been there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you know the whole vibe.
Cool.
And I would love to see you do that, because it's a shame for somebody that's done what you've done to let that go to waste. So hopefully we'll see more an hour show from you every time you do those, not just once, but every time you do that 5-year stint. A 5-month stint in Australia.
You're so right. That's so nice of you to say that too. And you're so right. I do need to just do this. And maybe that's, you know what, you've actually pushed me over the line that's going to be the thing that I work on, trying to get this thing filmed. I'd also love to come and do some more shows in America. I did a few before COVID, and I haven't been back since. But I'd love to try and come. I've got some buddies in LA and New York. I'd love to kind of come and do some shows. And while I'm there, head to Texas, have some barbecue.
You got to come out to barbecue, and then you do need to go down. I don't get any money for this, but Joe Rogan's Mothership is awesome.
Got to go to the Mothership.
I did stand up more often. I would do the Bella Room up in a Comedy Store. He did his Mothership is designed after the Comedy Store. His bar in the Mothership is even called Mitzi's. Oh,
that's nice.
Yeah. It's so nice. And there's a big beautiful portrait of her on the wall. And it's really tastefully done. And it's just the perfect environment. And all the other little venues, there's tons of little venues on 6th Street and all those places down there. It's like a little comedy mecca. All these little venues are down there that he is kind of inspired for them. And he's friends with these guys that open up their own little venue around the block from It's crazy. So you could be busy there 7 nights a week, going to several places, 7 or 8 places,
so cool.
Yeah.
God, I got to do it. That sounds amazing. I love it.
Really cool. Cameron James, tell everybody how they could find more about you one more time.
Yep. I'm on all the social media things at I Am Cameron James. I'm mainly on Instagram, if I'm honest with you, because TikTok annoys me. and I deleted Twitter at a certain point. So I'm mainly on Instagram, but you can find me and on YouTube too. I got some stand up there and some funny songs and stuff. So yeah, check me out.
Yeah, really good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I loved it. That was great.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to bolotour.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.